The sun had barely crept over the horizon when Grandpa stormed into the kitchen. Hat tilted low, face redder than a summer tomato. "Those golf carts are back," he growled, slamming his coffee mug on the table. At first I thought he was joking, but then I looked out the window and froze. Half a dozen shiny golf carts were parked across our ranch driveway like a barricade. Bright pink, neon green, and one with a HOA guest pass stuck on the windshield. The road to our barn was completely blocked. It was the third time that week. Karen, our next-door neighbor and self-appointed HOA queen, had decided our ranch. Entrance was the perfect overflow. Parking lot for her ladies' brunch. Her friends rolled up in their golf carts, laughing like they owned the place, ignoring our private property signs as if they were suggestions. Grandpa's jaw tightened. He'd spent 50 years keeping that land running, and seeing strangers treat it like a clubhouse didn't sit right. "I told her last time. Next one who parks here won't like what happens," he muttered, grabbing his old ranch jacket. I followed him out, half nervous, half curious. The air smelled like dust and fresh hay, but tension hung thicker than smoke. Grandpa didn't say much, just walked right up to the first cart, ran his hand along its side and smirked. "Nice carts," he said quietly. "Would be a shame if they got misplaced." Before I could ask what he meant, he walked toward the barn, whistling low. I'd seen that look before. The one that meant Grandpa was cooking up something big. Minutes later, Karen appeared at the end of the road in her floral sun hat, yelling from her shiny SUV. "Oh, relax, old man. They're just parking for a few hours," she said, waving her hand like we were background characters in her day. Grandpa didn't answer. He just tipped his hat, turned, and disappeared behind the barn doors. The sound of metal clinking echoed out. I didn't know what he was planning, but one thing was clear. Grandpa was done playing nice. And when the neighbors realized what he'd done with their precious golf carts later that afternoon, well, let's just say no one saw it coming. When Grandpa disappeared into the barn, I thought he was just going to cool off. But the sound that came next wasn't quiet. It was the low rumble of his old red tractor, the same one he hadn't used in months. I ran after him shouting, "Grandpa, what are you doing?" He didn't even look back. "Teaching some manners," he said over the engine's growl. Karen and her friends were still gathered near their carts, chatting and sipping iced tea like it was a Sunday picnic. They didn't notice the barn doors creaking open, or the determined rancher rolling out on his tractor like a sheriff riding into town. One by one, Grandpa drove up to the parked golf carts. He hitched each one to the back of the tractor, using thick tow ropes, and started dragging them, slow, deliberate, and silent. The crunch of gravel under the tires was the only warning. When Karen finally realized what was happening, her face turned ghost white. "Hey, you can't just move those!" she shrieked. Grandpa tipped his hat, not breaking stride. "They're on my land, which means they're on my time." Karen's friends stood frozen, clutching their drinks as Grandpa hauled the first cart straight into the barn. He parked it neatly next to the hay bales, and came back for another. By the time he finished, all 6 carts were lined up inside like trophies. Karen stomped her heels into the dirt, furious. "This is theft! I'll call the HOA! I'll call the police!" Grandpa leaned against the barn door, arms crossed. "Good. Tell him to bring a tow truck. You can have your toys back once you explain why they were on private ranch property." Karen didn't have a word to say after that. She just stood there, red-faced and sputtering, as Grandpa calmly closed the barn doors and locked them with the heavy steel latch. The rest of the morning was pure silence. The brunch was over before it started. One by one, Karen's guests called for rides home, leaving their golf carts locked away like barn prisoners. Grandpa went back inside, poured himself a fresh cup of coffee and said, "Reckon they'll read the sign next time." But the story didn't end there. The next day, something unexpected happened. Karen came back, and this time, she wasn't alone. The next morning, the air was heavy with that eerie calm that usually comes before a storm. Grandpa was already out feeding the cattle, when I noticed a convoy of cars rolling up our dirt road, 3 SUVs, all polished, all carrying the same smug energy. Karen led the parade, her sun hat back on, lips pursed like she'd been rehearsing a speech. Behind her came 2 HOA board members and a man in a neatly pressed shirt with a clipboard, probably the HOA's compliance officer. I called out, "Grandpa, they're back!" He didn't even flinch. "Let 'em come," he said, wiping his hands on his jeans. The group marched right up to the barn doors, Karen leading the charge like she owned the county. "Mr. Hawkins," she started, her tone sugary but sharp, "you unlawfully detained private property belonging to our guests. The HOA demands immediate return of the golf carts, or there will be consequences." Grandpa raised an eyebrow. "Consequences? You mean the kind where strangers park on my land without asking?" The man with the clipboard cleared his throat. "Sir, this area is part of the shared community easement. That means—" Grandpa cut him off with a chuckle. Son, this ranch was here 50 years before your HOA existed. The only thing shared around here is my patience, and it's running out. Karen folded her arms, glaring. You can't just take matters into your own hands. Grandpa smiled. Didn't take anything. Just secured some lost property until the owners could identify themselves. The HOA team huddled together, whispering like they'd stumbled into a courtroom without a case. Then, one of them stepped forward and said, Fine, we'll call the sheriff. Grandpa nodded calmly. Do that. Sheriff Daniels is an old friend, helped me fix that same barn door last winter. The color drained from Karen's face. She stammered something about legal paperwork and unprofessional behavior, but the fight was slipping from her voice. I stood there watching, amazed. Grandpa didn't shout, didn't threaten, he just stood firm. And somehow, that quiet confidence broke them more than anger ever could. Finally, Karen sighed, waving her hand. Fine, just unlock the barn. We'll remove the carts and leave. Grandpa looked at her for a long second, then said, You can have 'em back, but next time, park on your side of the fence. She didn't reply. The look she gave him could have curdled milk. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Because as they drove away, I saw that glint in Karen's eyes, the one that said she was planning something bigger. The next evening, the sky glowed deep orange as the sun sank behind the hills. You'd think things had settled down after the golf cart incident. But trouble has a way of finding its way back, especially when Karen's pride is involved. Grandpa was fixing a broken fence post near the barn when I noticed headlights creeping down the driveway again. 2 trucks, quiet as shadows, rolled up to the barn gate. Out stepped Karen, and this time she had hired a towing crew. I whispered to Grandpa, She's back. He didn't look surprised. Figured she couldn't let it go. Karen strutted forward, clipboard in hand. The same smug grin plastered across her face. We're retrieving the carts legally this time, she said, tapping her pen. And I brought witnesses. Grandpa leaned on the fence, calm as ever. Fine by me. Keys are in the ignition. Just don't scratch the barn doors. The tow truck drivers exchanged nervous glances. Everyone in town knew Grandpa. He wasn't the type you wanted to cross. But Karen barked orders like a general at war. Hurry up! Get them out before he changes his mind. The men started rolling up the barn doors. The first thing they saw wasn't the golf carts. It was a row of large wooden signs. Grandpa had hung overnight, each one painted bright red with bold hand-lettered words. Private ranch property. Trespassers will be towed by me. Karen's face turned beet red. You think this is funny? She snapped. Grandpa just smiled. Not funny, ma'am. Just fair warning. As the tow trucks hauled the carts away, one of the drivers whispered to me, Man, your grandpa's a legend. I couldn't help but grin. Karen, though, wasn't finished. You'll hear from our lawyers, she shouted as she climbed into her SUV. Grandpa tipped his hat, looking forward to it. Weeks passed. The letters never came. The HOA must have realized there wasn't a single legal claim that could touch our land. The property lines were clear, the signs visible, and the sheriff on Grandpa's side. One morning, as we sat on the porch, Grandpa looked out across the open field and said, People like Karen think rules only go one way. But out here, respect's the only law that matters. I nodded. Think she'll try anything else? He smirked. Not unless she wants her next party hosted in my barn again. We both laughed, the sound echoing across the quiet ranch. And from that day on, Karen's friends never parked near our driveway again. If you enjoyed watching Karen get what she deserved, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more crazy ranch stories like this one.